Welcome, folks online and elsewhere. We're going to call the regular meeting of the Planning Board to order. We have a full board tonight, so that's that. First item on our agenda is approval of the May 21st, 2026 meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
Because you weren't here. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have withdrawal of the request of Bora LLC as owner for property at 150 Portsmouth Boulevard. That does not require a vote. The applicant has withdrawn the application. We have a request to postpone by Reagan Electric as owner and Chinbury Property as applicant for property located at 94 Langdon Street and 98 Cornwall Street, requesting site plan review approval.
I will be recusing on that one.
Are we postponing to a date certain?
I was going to say we need to continue this to the July.
Motion to postpone items A and B to the July.
Just B.
Just
B.
B.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Any opposed? So I can explain later, but we'll get to it when we talk about our change in the regulations. So moving on to public hearings, new business, and as usual, procedure for public hearings. We follow presentation by the proponent, questions by the planning board members, public comment, limited comments to, for, against the application or proposal. Anyone providing public comment, you have to provide your name and address for the record. Anyone wish to speak in the up to 3 rounds has to speak in the preceding rounds. So you have to speak in the first round to speak in the second to speak in the third. First round is up to 3 minutes, oral comment only. Second round, if we have one, is a maximum of 5 minutes. You can do a presentation if necessary. And third round is a maximum of 5 minutes, oral comment only, after which the public hearing is closed. First item we have a public hearing is a request of Liberty Mutual Insurance Company as owner for property located at 0 Borthwick Avenue, requesting a wetland conditional use permit from section 1010-1750 for maintenance of a stormwater detention pond at the Liberty Mutual property. This project involves a replacement of a failed 24-inch culvert along with removing 2 feet of sediment from the existing detention pond, unburying 2 existing culverts which will be cleaned and reset, and removing and trimming vegetation. Total surface area impacts within the prime wetland buffer include approximately 9,500 square feet of temporary impacts or dredge work, 700 square feet of wetland buffer disturbance for replacement of the culvert, and 225 square feet of direct prime wetland impacts. This property is on Assessor's Map 240 Lot 3 and lies within the Office Research OR District. Who is here to present this application?
Good evening. Damon Burt, Fraggle Rock Environmental. We're presenting for Liberty Mutual. You gave a great summary on our project. It's relatively straightforward, so a lot of that really goes into most of the details that we're proposing. We have gone to the Conservation Commission meeting. You folks should have received a April 8th or April 13th letter discussing the Wednesday, April 8th meeting. We presented the proposal in front of the Conservation Commission, and they were in favor of recommending approval for our project. So we've submitted also an invasive species management and stormwater maintenance plan that you should have received. Basically, the existing detention pond has been maintained over the years, but not regularly. And, you know, the culvert has failed, and that's on basically the, that would be the east side. I don't see the north arrow on that plan, but where the yellow is, that's right where the cursor is, right in that area. So that's our closest to the prime wetland, and we have photos in there. And you know, it's really the size of the wetland. Certainly the disturbance around it probably doesn't necessarily dictate that the wetland is, you know, of super high functioning right there with the Phragmites and stuff, but it's really the size, and the city has designated that as prime wetland. So we're definitely noting that and requesting to do the work within that prime wetland buffer. So we're about 9,500 square feet, and that's the orange area. So we're gonna go through, we did some limited probing there, and it seems like there's vegetation and a bunch of sediment that's accumulated in the bottom of the pond, and we're proposing to take out about 2 feet of it, along with some invasive species management in the area. So that's our main, and then we'll be resetting the culvert. It's a 24-inch culvert, which we actually couldn't find. So right now, the water's sort of going in, and we think it's maybe going out through the material a little bit, but actually we weren't able to find the culvert. So we went back to the original design, and it was a 24-inch culvert. We're proposing to install right in the same location. You know, obviously it'd have to be excavated and get down to that, and you know, work with a contractor to set the culvert correctly, so it doesn't fail again. But so we're not changing any of the original stormwater design as part of this project, just basically restoring its function so it will detain water and allow some to go out. That's our main focus. There's also inlets to the pond, and those ends of the culverts are also, with time, have gotten covered up. So we're proposing to remove some of that material and free up those, basically the head walls, where the culverts come into the stormwater area. So we have a few of those areas. And then we have some limited tree clearing, and that's in the green zone. We are close to the railroad right away, so we're just going to do basically on the top of the bank, and we do have some photos later on that show some of the trees are basically starting to fall over. They're basically like quaking aspen and limited, you know, pretty quick growing trees, but they get blown over. So we're proposing, just as part of this maintenance, to clear some of those trees. And the Conservation Commission asked us how many trees were proposed to be removed, and I just want to confirm the total. We had 15 trees in that zone. So we had 3 red maples, 2 white pines, and 11 of the quaking aspen. So, but we're not going to, some of the photos later on, I'm not sure if you have that figure that has, yeah, in that section, if you go down to photos, there are some, yeah, that's the parking lot, and, you know, photo 5, you'll see Phragmites, and obviously the wetlands adjacent to that have a lot of Phragmites, invasive species. So we're going to manage that and truck it and bury it 5 feet off site. There isn't a, you know, adequate area on site to deal with the invasive species, so we're going to work with a contractor and have it buried per basically the standards for invasive species, 5 feet underground. We'll truck it off site. So some of the trees in photo 9, you'll see like the quaking aspen, they're up on that little section of bank. And you go farther up, there's some nicer oaks along the railroad track. We're not proposing to take any of those. But basically right now there's, you know, obviously when we do it, we'll clean up some of the trash that accumulates. Even during the time we're working on it, stuff just shows up there. And I don't know who would dump stuff there, because obviously it's Liberty Mutual and there's plenty of cameras, but there's a lot of stuff that shows up and is in the wetlands that we'll certainly deal with as part of the project. So that's our main scope. Trying to think of anything else that you may have questions about. We're basically going to follow the guidance for invasive species in the management, and you know, certainly take rid of the sludge material. Basically, they'll come out.
Is the 24-inch pipe there and just buried, or do you think it was not installed?
I'm pretty sure it was there and buried, but we can't find it. I mean, we could have, but it was kind of like mucky and digging. We just couldn't find it. We suspect it's there.
And are you going to be removing this debris with the equipment outside of the area with with arms going in, or do you have to go into the area?
We'll probably be going into it. We're still finalizing with the contractor, but we do have, there's a couple arrows, and that'll be an access point that likely will get excavators down in there. And we'll try not to go as much into there, but I think it's just logistics of distance that will have to be partially in there. We'll do whatever we can from the bank, basically, of the detention pond and reach in and clear, but I think there's likely excavator's gonna have to go into the pond and may access that culvert area from within the pond rather than the other side of, they'll dig probably from the top down, possibly. We're still sort of figuring out that concept from a contractor, but we don't propose to be out in that yellow area to work, or within the pond to work, or on the top of the berm.
And then what happens with the debris, the soil, the 2 feet?
Yeah, we're gonna do the same practice and basically just bury that off-site, because it has the seed source, so we're gonna consider it all basically the same as invasive species, because the soil itself will have the Phragmites seeds. We don't anticipate a ton, but if it's, probably in the tons, obviously, but, a couple feet of material will come out, so, several truckloads will bury off-site.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did you have your hand up, Joe?
I had the same question, so no,
Okay.
I'm all set.
In addition to the tree removal plan, I think there was a mention here from the Concom about a tree planting
Oh,
plan.
yes, good point. So we are gonna plant the 13 trees, and basically pick native trees. We have not formalized that with the landscaper that's on site, through Liberty Mutual, but we'll basically do similar on kind. I know we probably won't recommend, like quake and aspen, but likely, red maple would be appropriate, white pine possibly alongside the parking lot, so we just have to communicate. So we are gonna, Liberty Mutual said that we could plant the 13 trees. And those are gonna be along the parking lot. It might be a long section of this detention pond, but, along that general work area, we will be proposing. We don't have a final count. I mean, we have the count of trees, but we don't have locations yet. Yeah.
What's the motivation for doing this?
Through the city. The city, basically the property got transferred to Liberty Mutual, and Public Works was the one that, my understanding is, they were the ones that realized that there was not an outlet, or the pipe was buried in the pond. So the request came from the city first from Public Works, and Public Works have been involved in the project that way. So that's how it started. Yeah.
Councilor Moreau.
You talked a lot about some trash that's gotten into the area and trying to look at some of the pictures and just the guardrail that's there. Is
Yeah.
there a way you could design it to try to prevent that from happening? Because I'm guessing like wind and maybe even plows, when they're plowing, things get caught up. I'm just wondering if there's some sort of even fabric barrier or something that would keep stuff from flowing in there. I'm just
Yeah.
curious if there are ways.
No, that's a great question. I really honestly don't know the majority of the history, but I know there's, some people that, probably don't have homes that use that general area and cross through that. So some of that trash potentially comes through there. I don't really know all the details of that. The landscaper that deals with the snow, as part of this proposal, we updated the, snow management plan, and so a lot of the piles that have been previously along this pond area or stormwater area, we're not going to be using that for snow storage. The snow storage is going to be basically outside the buffer, the 100-foot, as much as possible. I mean, that's the guidance, and that's what Liberty Mutual basically wrote up. So we're going to, the contractor has that documentation that we're gonna, so we are adapting. So the answer is yes, we're working on that. And so really any trash associated with the snow should be not near the pond. So 100% I can say yes. The plan is there and the guidance. So
The hope is the contractor follows it.
contractor, I know personally has received the plan.
Okay.
So, and if they have questions, they could contact us. So I'm pretty sure, and talking to Liberty Mutual, they had conversations. I'm just not in the process of guaranteeing anything, but all intents and purposes, there won't be any snow storage in that area. I mean, certainly there'll be
Plowing.
plowing and working in the area, but no like major storage. And we have
big
had
Okay.
previously, when I first started on the project, there were large piles, and that's not going to happen. So that's a great question, because that really gets to a lot of the issue. So yeah, thank you for that. Sure.
I might have missed it, but the timing of your work, we're entering this time of year where we have microburst storms like we just had a few hours ago.
Yeah, I saw the trees and the branches.
Yeah, and you're pretty close to your property line, it looks like, with those filter socks on the outlet. Assuming you do expose that culvert and you assume you can get a flow back going to the east, if you haven't gotten all of that stuff mucked out of the pond, I'm concerned about timing. You might need to keep an eye on the weather.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, because we would know that we'd want to try to do it during a dry period, and our expectation likely that it would just be a few days. So we would, in a dry period,
Timed right, it's an easy job.
Yeah.
Timed badly, it could be a mess.
Exactly. So if it, say if one of those bursts came through, but we wouldn't expect to be during that period, we'd go for a real dry period. So we don't anticipate, but we'd certainly berm up the exit and then have any contingent plans for any stormwater to hold on site and basically not discharge anything that's.
And do you have and this is the other thing I might have missed, I've been busy with things, a maintenance plan so it doesn't get as gummed up as it has?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We have a
If
yearly.
you've got it, you don't have to explain it, you've got it?
Oh, sure. Yep.
I'm good.
Yep.
Any other questions for the applicant? If not, I'm going to open the public hearing. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Is there anybody here or on Zoom wishes to speak to, for, or against this application?
Our ratings are really plummeting, aren't they? Our ratings are plummeting.
One more call. Anybody here on Zoom wishes to speak to, for, or against this application? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion. Vote to find the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 10.1017.50 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll make another motion to grant the conditional use permit with the following conditions. I'm going to reference the staff memo of 2.1 through 2.4 in that motion.
Can I just add a correction to the first condition?
Sure.
That the applicant shall provide a planting plan to the planning department instead of the planning board.
Accepted, yep.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nope. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
We have a request the City of Portsmouth, New Franklin School as owner for property at 1 Franklin Drive, requesting a wetland conditional use permit from section 10.10.17.50 for work within the 100-foot wetland buffer area in conjunction with building additions to the New Franklin Elementary School. This project proposes a site increase of 535 square feet of permanent impervious impacts within the wetland buffer area. Additional stormwater infrastructure has been added to offset the increase in impacts within the buffer. This property is on Assessor's Map 220, Lot 2, and lies within Municipal M and Highway Noise Overlay Districts. Who is here to present this application?
Good evening. Ken Lynchy, Director of Building Grounds for Portsmouth Schools. I have Adam as well from EEI, our general contractor, and Neil from Ty and Bond. We're here before you to present the final phases of our elementary renovation project. As you know, we started with Little Harbor School in 2015. We went on to Dondero as part of the reviews of the elementary and redistricting. New Franklin was then the next school up for renovations. This phase here before you is to begin the 3-year phase project to allow us to then start shuffling the students in the building around to get the school adequately to the same value and design as the other schools as well. So I'm going to hand it off to Neil. He can give a little insight on the backside, and I can answer any other further questions for you as well.
Good evening, Neil Hansen with Ty and Bond. So the focus of the application for the wetland CUP is the addition closest to the highway. The site is primarily or the playground to the west is surrounded by wetlands. So that area where that addition is going, the drive aisle and the parking is within the 100-foot buffer. One of the objectives of the project was to not lose any parking on site. However, once we had the wetland buffers, we did end up eliminating 4 parking spaces, so we didn't have any additional impervious surface within the 50-foot buffer. There's a small increase in impervious within the 100-foot. And that's just a result of the drive lane needing to maintain that full width access around the rear of the school for emergency access, and then also maintaining as much of that parking on site as possible. For anyone that's been around there, it's a pretty tight site in general. And then within that work area, within the 25-foot buffer, where we are proposing to restore and replant that with a conservation seed mix. And then the other piece of mitigation, we're redirecting the stormwater, which right now sheet flows directly into that small wetland adjacent to the highway. That'll be collected into a closed drainage system, deep sumps, oil water separator hoods, and discharged into the existing closed drainage system away from the wetlands. That's really the gist of it, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of the applicant?
Kind of a random one. And there was a note on the plans about removing sheds and coordinating with an owner. Is there a different owner of some of this? Are those owned by someone else?
No, that's ours. So those are our PTA sheds.
Okay.
They're right with the parking spots. So we're just going to put them over to the left next to the blue garden shed.
That makes. I just wasn't sure if it was a different landowner or something.
Any other questions? Yes, Bill.
So the letter winds up with the sentence, "The proposed additional impervious area within the wetland buffer is in the best interest of the public, as the proposed project will address existing student overcrowding issues at the New Franklin School." This is speaking of the current enrollment at the school?
Yeah, so what we're talking about there is current enrollment at school, but also current needs of the students in the school. So we have a lot of staff members who are not working in classroom or office spaces. They're actually working either in closets, corridor spaces, and all that. And this whole process, if we look at the plan as a whole, is to get them into educational spaces where we can have more one-on-one pieces. And this phase 1 here allows us to start that shift in the school of rotating and moving towards the end goal of the student needs.
So that's the current state. I'd like to think kind of master plan and capacity of
Yes.
the impact on infrastructure in the city and such. I think the New Franklin School catchment area would include the outer Market Street and outer Woodbury area, which has 2 projects that we know of. One is in process, and the other was going to be with us tonight but was deferred. That together will have a population of about 1,000 people.
Correct.
Within the catchment area for New Franklin. Is there a... So if this uses up all of the space that is expandable, pushing in a little bit into the wetlands which surround the school, and you got roads on either side, is there a strategy going forward if you have a significant number of students from these 1,000 people that will be phase 2 for New Franklin?
There is a plan in place. So in just long story short, this is one of 2 additions Next year, we're going to be putting on 4 classroom on addition to help alleviate that. Right now, we work with the planning board, seeing what infrastructure for new housing is coming in strategically throughout the city, and then we strategically look at what is being built in those housing units, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom, and how do we calculate what students are coming in now, and or what's coming into the future. And some of these plug and plays, what we would say is, you talk about Market Street, we have Atlantic Heights, who goes to Little Harbor School, but then you have Spinnaker Point or Osprey Landing that goes to New Franklin. So we strategically look at bigger developments, smaller developments, and in what school district that we will then bus them to or identify them into as part of the redistricting of the schools. So we have a separate school committee on that as well as working with the planning board and the city councilors to ensure that I don't come back to you 5 years down the road and I got to blow out the whole backside of the wetland to put on 15 more classrooms. So we're well aware, and we try to stay ahead of that curve of the building.
I think Councilor Moreau wants to add to this, too.
The city council as a whole has actually toured all of the schools, and we've worked very closely with the school board, who's actually in charge of the districting. So when new projects come on, they can then make a decision if it's one really good-sized project, as it going to a specific school. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to go to New Franklin. It might go to Little Harbor, because Little Harbor has more space. I can tell you, out of all 3 schools, New Franklin definitely needs the most upgrades and expansion. It's not up to the level of our other 2 schools for sure. So these are necessary needs now. So the sooner we can get these done, the better. But it's really the amount of populations of children. I mean, you start to look at like West End Yards, that didn't really bring a whole lot of children, believe it or not, to the area. So we do have some larger projects that might bring children, but it's really not our job to look down the road at that. It's the school board's job to work with the planning, which they do very closely with the planning department, knowing what's coming, and then they can make those strategic decisions about where those kids will go to school.
Will we have a reflection of this plan in the master plan?
This plan, what do you mean by this plan?
Well, if the district understands the coming population.
They're doing student population projections, and that they have been talking to you, Teal, about that, so we will have that, yes.
Okay. And the implications for the structures in the 3 schools.
Yes, and now we're off topic
So
for
conditional
these
use
people who
permit.
are waiting, so let's get into that. We've got a master plan conversation towards the end, so we can.
Good.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearings. Anybody here or on Zoom wishes to speak to or against this application? Second and last call. Anybody here or on Zoom? Is anybody on Zoom at all?
There's no one.
There's not even there, okay. All right. Going to close the public hearing.
I move we vote to find the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 101750 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of facts as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Vote to grant the conditional use permit with the conditions outlined in the staff memo.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. We have a request by Riggs, RIGZ Enterprises LLC as owner for property located at 806 Route 1 Bypass, requesting a 4th one-year extension to the site plan approval that was originally granted on June 23rd, 2022. The 3rd extension will expire on June 23 of this year. Peter, do you want to explain the
I do,
extension
and also
process?
the engineer is here, if you have any questions for him.
Okay.
If you recall, this project was approved, and it was gonna be the city.
Not the city of Portsmouth.
Not the city of
City
Portsmouth, the
market.
city market, retail market. The property next door became available, and they purchased that, and that's where they built the city retail establishment. And this site has not been, there have been some drainage improvements that were tied to that property that were done, but the site plan review agreement and conditions precedent for this project were never satisfied, so they didn't vest the project. And so while that project next door was being built, this project has come back for several extensions. They went to TAC this month. Nothing has changed with the exception of adding an 8-foot fence along the rear of the property, which now can be constructed as a permitted fence. But they're still moving forward. I don't know that they have a full plan on what it's going to be, but they're still considering it just going to be retail. And so the project next door is wrapping up, and they're looking to get their bond back for that project. And I would assume they would then move forward with all the conditions they need to meet to satisfy and vest this project. If you have questions for the
Do we have, folks have questions for the engineer, or?
I have a question for Peter.
Yep.
Do we have any reason to think that we would have to give another extension to this project? Because I'd be really weary.
I can't speak for the applicant about what their time frame is, but certainly if they come back, you can't deny it without having a public hearing.
Right.
So, but they can maybe speak to their timeline.
Paul, do you have a question for?
For the chairman or Peter or both, can we grant a fourth and final extension to the project?
You could,
I think it's a site plan, right?
it's a site plan. You could grant a fourth. If they come back for a fifth, you could not grant that.
I could not grant this one.
Right.
You have to have a public hearing,
Yeah.
which is not, it's not on the
Not
agenda for a
advertised, right.
public hearing.
We'd have to bring it back.
You could grant an extension with the understanding that no more will be granted.
I guess I'm trying to understand, and perhaps they can help us, that as approved, this project, what would it be? A mirror of the new one that's right next door?
Well, I think they're still
Wine
considering it just going to
wine
be
in
retail.
one building, beer in the other?
They're considering they used to be retail. I don't think it's going to be the same as what's next door, but
Yeah.
Would we like to hear from the applicant? Yes, Tony.
If we can hear the applicant before my question, I was just going to ask if there's any precedents. Do we have any precedents of approving these extensions to this extent?
I've never seen this many.
Never have either.
But, you know,
I can tell you in the
Certainly
time
had
I've been
two.
here, I've never seen.
Would you like to approach and introduce yourself and give us an explanation?
Yes, thank you. I'm Alex Ross, engineer and surveyor. I prepared the site plans for this. And, yeah, we didn't mean to set a record on this one. It was so complex with all the utilities for both of these sites. We were working with the city and DOT, mainly on drainage that just kind of cut through every which way. And was in poor condition, ran underneath buildings. So that was really time consuming. I'm here with the builder, Dave Grzybowski. He can speak more to it. But the actual work on this site, because we had to do so much next door that kind of intermingled with this, the remaining work on this site is really small. I think he has an estimate together, for the site work is $30,000. And the plan is to jump right on that. So I don't think there'd be any need for another extension.
So the idea that this may be the last extension fits with your plans?
Yes.
I can support that.
Yes, Tony, and then Joe.
When does it expire?
23rd?
Next week.
Tuesday.
Next week.
Nothing like pushing it right to the final.
Wait for a meeting.
Yes, Joe?
Just seeing that, I mean, I recall approving this, previously. I don't recall it being a difficult or controversial project, and I think denying it doesn't do anyone any good. The fact that they're ready to go, and jump on it immediately, I wouldn't be inclined to it. Again, if it came before us for a fifth time, I think that would just be silly, but, I mean, I'm gonna take their word that they're ready to jump right on this, and let's get this over with.
And you are going to do the 8-foot fence in the back?
We actually have already. Yeah, there
Okay.
was some damage to the existing fence. And we worked with the neighbors on exactly what they wanted to see. And we've kind of submitted and given that material to Peter.
That's the only issue I remember as being a problem. So if it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
So. Somebody like to make a motion?
Motion to grant a one-year extension of the site plan approval to June 23rd, 2027.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in a year. See you in a year.
See you in 15 minutes. I'm gonna go get a beer.
I think they know better not to come back again.
So did folks get a chance to look at the proposed revision to our rules and procedures?
Yes.
The way that works, we can do that at a public meeting. It does take a vote, but I assume folks have a question. The idea of continuances, and by the way, legal has reviewed it and they're good with it, so.
They are good with it? That was going to be one of my questions.
I knew it would be, that's why I asked. So the idea of continuances, strictly going by the book, you come in here for a public meeting, public hearing. If you ask for a continuance, it goes to the next meeting. There's no additional notice. So the abutters don't know what's going on. If they're here that night and they hear the first request for continuance, they are here to hear it. But it's typical for them not to show up at subsequent meetings. So some applicants I know sometimes have used this, and I'm not saying anybody has in this instance, but I've seen it in other jurisdictions where this has been, to pick up on the vice chair's question at one of our meetings, it can be a divisive way to sort of avoid public input. This is intended to avoid that, and you can't do it without having a rule. So this is a rule. Basically would allow one continuance. You don't need a reason. You want a continuance, you get a continuance. If you want a second continuance for cause, means they have to demonstrate a reason that the board would vote on, and that's it. You get up to 2, the way it's written. Yes.
This is really silly, but just because it was part of the public comment that had prompted this clause, is there a way that we can like put a piece of paper on the door that says, hey, FYI, 123 Main Street has been postponed or continued, so that at least people in the audience will know?
Well, we post the agendas on the board.
Yeah.
And those are updated if applicants request to postpone.
Yeah.
I mean, we could certainly,
I mean, I just, like,
It's actually more than that one comment.
yeah.
It is something that's, because I've seen it here since I've been on this board and with other boards, it's just better practice. Because what this does is it requires applicants to be ready when they request a slot on the agenda.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it takes a lot of staff time to go through applications that they're re-reviewing and re-reviewing, and then they get continued. That's a horrible waste of staff time.
I guess along the lines of your concerns, I think it would be important. I know when I first joined the board, we actually made a really big deal of actually suspending the rules and pulling things out of order and bringing them all up front for the purposes of postponement, right? So that would be one whole vote, and then we'd read them into the record and postpone them each individually. And I think on top of maybe making it slightly more formal, we also need to explain to the public anything that is postponed that was a public hearing will not happen. It will be, the public hearing will now be at the next meeting. And I just think if we're much more deliberate about spelling that all out, maybe we won't run into the circumstance that we did previously.
Bill?
I don't know if this is drafting or by design, but the way this is written, you get one free bite at the apple where you don't have to notify the abutters. and it's only the second time that you get a continuance that you have to notify the abutters.
No, the first one everybody's already notified. That's why it only says it. So the first meeting, everybody's been notified. So you can't request a continuance except at a meeting where the abutters have been notified, and presumably if they're interested, they'd be here. So that's why it doesn't say that, because to get on the agenda, they have to be notified initially. So that first meeting, like the public hearings we just had, the abutters were notified.
Right.
If the New Franklin School wanted to be continued for some reason, under the new rule, they could, city'd be different, but anyway, they'd get a continuance, one continuance for free, but the abutters had been notified for tonight.
But they haven't been notified for the second one.
They would if they're here.
Under this, they would.
Yeah, they would.
I don't read it that way, but I guess I'm alone. Allowed, request applicants are allowed one continuance for any reason to the next meeting of the board.
To the very next meeting, yep. So that's
Right.
defined as to when.
Right.
Yep. In that case, the abutters are all here in the room or they're watching if they're interested in participating, right? So they hear that continuance. That's their notification
Right.
that is their
Right.
hearing of that continuance. Yeah.
We could require formal, some master plan consultant texting me for some reason.
He knows where you are.
There could be an additional form, we could make it an additional requirement for renotice,
Yes.
but presumably, the thought was, they've been noticed, they're here if they're interested. She's really, okay. Turn off.
You're watching and she has some information that you need to.
Yeah, the only person watching.
The thought is that people would be here and would know that it had been
Right.
delayed. And if they were not here, they wouldn't know.
Or they're not interested. And that happens too. However the board feels about it.
I was wondering if there's an option to continue it to not the next meeting, but they would have to notify. If it's like, say something came up with the sewage in the middle of it, the underground utilities, they're like, we're gonna need a few months to fix this, before we come back to you. We'd like to preserve our first continuance, but if that's the case, we have to notify everybody.
We could put in a provision that it just gets re-notified, and then it's just covered.
Another example is during the meeting, a resident or an abutter has a comment that the applicant hears, and they say, well, I can address that. That is something I hadn't heard before. I can address that. Let's continue this to the next month. We'll engineer it and fix it, and we'll come back with the proper. So in other words, it's not always a tactic that's used.
No, right.
As a tactic, it's a, it could be used to benefit.
And that's also that could be just cause for a second continuance too, if something came up, this guy, couldn't make it to the first meeting, just came up with those issues that need to be addressed. That's a good reason for another continuance. So, the question is one of notice, if we could require additional notice. We can do whatever we want, it's our rules, so.
I don't think there's any harm to the public if they want to go 2-3 months to work on it, as long as they re-notify the public.
I think maybe if they're not going to be noticed directly, if they're not going to be scheduled from that meeting to the next meeting, then they have to renotice
Yeah.
whenever it is, right? So if you're going to go from this meeting 3 meetings out, you'll have to renotice. But as long as you're going to the direct next meeting and the people are here and know that, I think that's okay. As long as this conveys that, which I'd have to read it again with that mindset.
That's a small text change.
Yeah, it's a pretty minimal, I think, to just make sure if you're going to postpone to any point beyond the next meeting, you're going to have to renotice.
If not continued to the next month's meeting, it shall be re-notified.
Exactly. That is
That's what I was trying to
minimal.
say.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd be good with that.
Make that change.
Yes. Do you need a vote for this?
Yeah, we do.
Can I just add my comment?
Yeah.
From our administrative staff, the second to last sentence says, the applicant may withdraw the application without prejudice and resubmit the application when it and the applicant are ready to proceed. We just want to make it clear that in that case, they'll have to pay new application fees. And so the suggestion would be to, after ready to proceed, it would be, and is subject to all associated fees. So that we know,
They know they have to
they know
actually
that
pay
they'll
it.
have to not just pay renoticing, but a new application
Application
fee.
fee.
Because
How
it'll
about
be,
put that right after, resubmit the application
Yep.
with all associated fees?
yeah.
With all
That would work,
associated
too.
fees, yep. Two simple changes.
Yes, Joe?
Where this was most commonly confusing when I was a chair of one of the previous boards, is someone could come to the podium or even just walk through the door and see which members were present that particular evening and read the tea leaves for the predictive vote. And at any time during a presentation, if they felt their application was out of favor, they could say, it used to be that they could say, I want to stop presenting tonight and continue to another time. Does this capture that as well? Or do applicants still have the right
No.
to do that,
The applicant has the right to do that as long as the public hearing has not been closed.
as long as it has not been closed? That's
The-
right.
Right,
the
if they're
zoning-
still
the-
presenting.
The zoning board has a provision that says if the public hearing's been opened, if your application's been read into the record, you can postpone, but as soon as the public hearing starts, you can't do that. Because of that, so it has to move forward.
Right.
But what if he's just, in your example, it sounded like he was still presenting his application.
Yes.
And hadn't actually opened the public hearing yet. So what does the zoning say when that happens?
That's exactly that's exactly.
It's
the
our
case.
rules, it's
Yeah,
not.
it's your-
Not,
it's our-
sorry,
it's our
so it's
rules of
not
procedure. So
dictated.
Okay.
that was, I made a note, did the board have any other issues on our rules of procedure? So that's one.
Okay, all right.
We could consider that. I tried to make this simple.
Yes. Well, no, this is productive. This is good.
So the way it is right now,
I would make a motion to approve it with the two amendments
Okay.
discussed.
Second.
any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Bill?
So the subject that Rich DiPantema wanted to talk about 1 or 2 meetings ago when he was here and we were deferred it and he wasn't notified that it was going to be deferred.
Except that he did hear that, so go ahead.
Right, I understand. We're not making any provision to notify people, the abutters, if something has been deferred.
Yes, we are. It was a continuance. That's what they requested, was a continuance. This would change it so that, and that particular application has been continued multiple times.
Right.
This would require a withdrawal. And if, absent a withdrawal, it'd be denied without prejudice, so it gets removed from the agenda.
So he would be notified before the meeting, the abutter would be notified before the meeting, so they would know not to bother to come. That's the,
Well, if you're getting notified, there's going to be a new meeting, so yeah, then in that case, you want to come.
okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we want to do anything else with the rules, like allowing withdrawals? Leave it the way it is?
It's not happening very often for us.
No, it
I don't
isn't,
think
but-
it has happened for us, but
I was in another community the other night, and one of the people who was in this room did exactly what you said for that reason.
Yeah.
So it is, applicants are aware of it. People good with that?
Yep.
I'll just quickly not bother folks. We're gonna have a meeting about zoning amendments. But we've got a whole bunch, including site plan revisions, including parking and all that stuff. I'll check to see if Zoe, our consultant, had anything else. They are currently, the master plan people are currently working on a video overview of the draft plan recommendations. It's gonna be posted on the website probably by the end of this month, to enable people to get a quick sense of the vision and recommendations where we're at with that so far. They're gonna have flash vote surveys in July and August for additional input for master plan questions. One, perhaps 2 of those, because we're limited to 5 questions at a time, will be regarding historic district issues. So we'll get a chance to have input on those questions for those flash votes. They are working on plan text and layout in preparation for hopefully publication of a full draft in the fall. So they're cranking away on that. And then the last thing they're specifically asking about was the photos, as I mentioned with the meeting we had with the HTC. Just quickly read this. Let me see what she texted me. It's not on my iPad.
We get royalties from the photos?
Okay, yeah, it's just a confirmation that it's all good. So unless there's anything else, I think we're done in before 8 o'clock. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.